This was, of course, a day of mourning in the United States as the first of several memorials were held for George Floyd.
No matter what may come my way, my life is in your hands.
In a televised service, family, friends, political leaders, and Hollywood stars gathered to remember the 46-year-old who was killed last week. Thousands of more people gathered outside and at the scene of Floyd's death to pay tribute and continue calls for justice and an end to systemic racism. A similar memorial you can see there was held in New York City, where other members of the Floyd family live. For more on the service today, I'm joined by CNN's Daryl Forges from North Central University in Minneapolis. Hi, Daryl. Good to see you again. A lot of very emotional moments throughout that. Tell us a bit more about the service.
Yeah, Vashi, that's right. Good evening to you. The memorial was very moving in so many different ways. There were a lot of people out here to honor the life and legacy of George Floyd. Now, one of the biggest things that really stood out during this memorial service was a moment of silence. That was for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That's because that's how long George Floyd was on the ground before he took his final breath. And it was just amazing to see how silent it was during that time. Now, during the memorial service, a lot of George Floyd's family members spoke about the good times. In fact, they called him the gentle giant because of his 6'4" frame, but at the same time, they say that his heart was even bigger. Now, Reverend Al Sharpton eulogized George Floyd, and one of the biggest things that he really talked about during that time was really using the whole knee on George Floyd's neck as a symbol throughout his eulogy, basically saying, talking to the justice system when it comes to African Americans in this country, get your knee off of our necks. And that was a big thing he was saying all throughout that time. And he's also talking about a possible march we could see down the road in Washington later on in a couple of months or so. But another moving thing we did see, Vashi, was after the service, when the casket was carried out and people were chanting George Floyd's name and just emotional. Seeing that energy in that moment, Vashi, was just unreal. Just seeing the emotions of people all around here. Now, you just talked about it. There was several dignitaries and celebrities that were here for today's memorial, including Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, the governor of Minnesota, the police chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, celebrities like Kevin Hart, Ludacris, Master P, Tiffany Haddish. They were all here to honor George Floyd. Now, you talked about it. This is one of 3 memorial services. This was Minneapolis' way of saying their final goodbyes, because now George Floyd's body will be moved to North Carolina for a memorial service there over the weekend, and then to Houston, Texas, where he will be buried. Vashi?
Daryl, just before we got to you, we were showing our viewers some of the live scenes in New York, in Washington, in Georgia. There are still a lot of people on the streets protesting. Everything looks very peaceful. I know you've been in Minneapolis all week, and you've been speaking to people out there protesting. What's your sense of how things will unfold tonight?
Well, I think here we could possibly very well see peaceful protests continue, mainly because George Floyd's brother, who was here a couple of days ago, thanked protesters for their support, but at the same time urged protesters to remain peaceful. Now, the protesters, Vashi, says that they're not going anywhere anytime soon until all 4 police officers were prosecuted. That's happened, and now the big thing now is moving forward to a possible court date. 3 of those police officers did face a judge earlier today, and they were set for 3, granted $1 million on bail or $750,000 with conditions. Now, Vashi, those conditions include no work in security or law enforcement, surrender guns and gun permits, and they were also ordered not to have contact with the victim's family. So moving forward, the biggest hope is that the protests here in Minneapolis will remain peaceful.
All right, thanks so much for your reporting, Daryl. CNN's Daryl Forges from Minneapolis. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.